G'day, Jordan. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Hey, Grant, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate you taking the time to hang out and talk with me, man. I'm doing pretty good.
That's good to hear. It's brilliant to catch up with you. I've been following you for a little while, and there's plenty to talk about, which we'll get into. Let's start though with how you got into photography and how you fell into landscape photography. How that bug bit.
Man, what's funny is I was just thinking about this conversation we were going to have today, and I started to write out a little bit just to give myself some notes, and I
Sure.
realized I've been out of high school for 20 years now.
Wow.
I'm sure you know that feeling. And I'm like, geez, like it's been a minute. It's been a while.
Been a
There's,
little bit longer for me. It's probably
yeah.
coming up for 35 years, I think, something like
Woo! I know, man, it's crazy, but it's good to reflect upon those things sometimes because like we're all on our path and thinking about like how I'm here and why I'm here. Like I I've always been behind a camera. Like I grew up in a house that was very technologically savvy in the 80s and 90s.
sure.
My parents always had cameras in the house. We had video cameras and VHS and Betacam and Polaroids, and I used to run around with the Polaroid camera all the time and take pictures of random things. And what's interesting is I really found the art of it in college, and
Mhm.
it's then where my life fell into realizing I could use computers to make art. And I always knew that I wanted to make art, but I was just a horrible drawer, illustrator. And
Sure.
at the time, there wasn't a lot more than that. And just photography had always been there. But
Mhm.
what really got me behind the camera at first was like videography and video production, film
Okay.
production. And ended up majoring in that in college and kind of took that with me into like my first sort of career of starting to film mainly bands and music.
Okay. Yep.
Um, and music was like, is and will always be also a major thread in my life.
Mm.
And music took like, when I got out of school, I started teaching music lessons at a music store, and that's where I started meeting musicians and gaining connections to starting to also take photos and
Sure.
videos,
Sure.
and that took me. I ended up after school. I moved from New York on the East Coast of the states to Oregon,
Hmm.
and I moved out in 2007. Geez,
Right. Yep.
2007 now. Yep, and that experience of coming out here and seeing like a totally different landscape, and I'm super blessed to be. I live in a place that people come here to be tourists to. My
Yeah. Yeah.
backyard is filled of things like this and around me. And I'm that process of moving into more of a natural wild area, and then music took me down the path of photography. And really I was like a gigging musician and taking photos for about 5 or 6 years.
Mm.
And in 2010, I got together with a group of people and we started doing live streaming of concerts and multi-track
Right.
audio recording. And this was like 2010, like nobody was even thinking about streaming at the time.
Yeah. It was a pretty
Um,
rare thing in 2010. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And even then, it was like Spotify was just coming out. So the idea of streaming audio was before our time. And it was one of those situations that gave me a lot of experience with camera systems and streaming and mixing audio. And I was
Sure.
taking photos and doing all the social media at the time. And as that startup kind of fell apart, I found myself working. I got myself a job at a local venue in town that does corporate and large scale events,
Mm.
and shifted my work life into doing more corporate stuff, things like large conferences and awards dinners and all sorts of things in between.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of took the load off of me trying to do freelance video and photo work.
Yep.
And that's when I settled more into doing photography as an art form, because I had that
Hmm.
opportunity to like, okay, the time behind the screen was now for me and not for somebody else.
Yeah.
And even at that time, I was still mainly shooting concerts and then dabbling in more nature photography. And I loved shooting concerts. I think it taught me a lot about reading light,
Yeah.
taught me a lot about reading people's expressions, taught me how to avoid people at popular lookouts because I had to dodge drunk people at music venues. It taught me a lot, but once I once I started seeing nature photography work that was more, I don't know, exciting to me, more magical, more out of this world. I think that's what drew me even more from shooting concerts to really honing in on like a passion I had with the camera
Mm.
and in terms of like nature stuff. And at that point in my life, this is like 2016 or so, my I in real life career of like live production, I settled into becoming a video director, and I was
Yep.
doing video systems, camera operation, doing a lot of screens and projection, and that part of my life was really taking off.
Mm.
And that's what kind of just made me not do concert work anymore because I was constantly around thousands of people. At that point, the shows we were doing could be massive and they could be week long. And I started freelancing on the side doing that work too. And
Sure.
it eventually actually took over. I left this job I was at for 5 years and went 100% freelance
Yeah,
in
yeah.
live events. Was where are we now? 2017. And that's like when really when nature photography hit for me was 2017.
Mm.
Uh, and the beginning of this story, this
Yeah,
chapter of
okay.
where I'm at.
But let's delve into nature, I guess. What is it about that that makes you, how is it that doing that makes you feel good? Because for me, and for a lot of the people that I talk to, that's the reason why they do it. It's either a mental health thing or a physical health thing. They're doing hiking, and the photography started off as a thing on the side, and now it becomes the reason for the hike. What is it to you?
Man, I think it became a like a therapeutic thing for me. It
Mm-hmm.
became so basically, let me start that over. Nature became a therapeutic thing for me because it gave me an opportunity to be like alone, away from people. I hate to say it. I work in live events, but I'm one of those people I'm like introverted and extroverted where I can function in those places, but it drains me. And photography has always been a way for me to recharge.
Yeah.
And I've always been drawn to nature. And once I like was able to connect like my love of nature and then creating something, I think that's what made like clicked for me. And I think the being in a place where at the time I was starting to travel a lot with freelancing my work, and I had opportunities to like extend my trip or change my flight a couple extra
Yep.
days. I find myself in Las Vegas quite often because there's a lot of corporate work down there or live event work. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, I'll tack on a couple extra days and go to Death Valley. Or if I'm down in San
Nice.
Francisco, I could go down to Big Sur or
Mm-hmm.
explore Santa Cruz coast. And so I leveraged those opportunities. And I think that like photography is and was always an opportunity for me to do something for myself and to
Yeah.
like
Right.
have some self-care through all that. And I still juggle because there is being a professional full-time photographer is a big deal. Like you do
Yep.
anything full-time, it means it's your job. And I've
Yeah.
been self-employed now for 6 years, freelancing and doing side work for lots of years. And anytime any of this stuff it becomes like all you do, it becomes a lot harder to have like passion for it.
Yeah. That's right.
So yeah, it's been a big part of my life. I think photography's like music, like I'll never sell my guitar, but I'll never sell my camera either.
Mm.
I've hit a point where photography has fulfilled like the creative part of me and a passion part of me and a natural part of me, and it allows me to connect to nature better. And
Yeah. Yeah.
um it's really such a magical like art form, hobby, career path. It's I love photography, man.
Yeah. Fair enough. What is it that makes you want to do it? Do you set yourself goals? Do you have projects, or is it just that relaxation. Okay, it's time to decompress. I've been under a bit of pressure over here in my life, and I need to just get out there and go and do something for myself.
I think I've drawn, like when I reflect upon it and I look back at my work and what I'm like into, what I vibe with, and I'm drawn to the same reason why I like live events, and it's the big show.
Yeah,
Um, I'm a, I'm not what you would call like a quiet photographer. My work is not quiet, and I love quiet work, whatever you want to call that. I think
I know what you
forget,
mean.
and that's
The
great, but
less vibrant, less impactful, less in your face sort of
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
it can still be all those things and still not what I do, right?
yeah,
But I love, for me, it's the big show. And it doesn't need to be just like purple, pink skies and crazy clouds.
sure, sure.
It needs to like be vibrant and hit you. It needs to be visceral. It needs to have something that like gets you. And for me, it's like nature. Oh, nature is so beautiful, and it could be captured naturally and still be beautiful.
Hmm.
But what's unique to me is my eye and
Yep.
how I feel like I love using the camera system and the lensing and those tools to create something that is magical and different and unique, but as natural as I can. I'm not really a compositor, but I do use like wide angle lenses to
Sure.
distort things. I
Yep.
use really high telephoto lenses to compress things. But I don't know, something like I just want to give like the spotlight to nature. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yep.
Uh, and sometimes to do that, you got to light her up well and put the lipstick on the proverbial pig, bring it into Photoshop and paint some happy trees. I got to use, how many more alliterations or whatever can I use there? Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, I guess what I'm interested in is, do you do a lot of planning on your shoots, or do you do?
yeah, I would say that I used to, and it's been a different ride. Like the last couple years in my photography journey's been like less of that, but I used to plan all the time. And now I feel like it's about when it feels right,
Yeah.
to go out and shoot. Though I'm still planning, and I'll say that I catch myself over planning sometimes or getting super stressed out. I think that's the main thing is managing anxiety.
Yeah.
And you've been out, you're like, oh God, what does the one app say? What does this other app say? Oh, but
Yep.
the light's
Yep.
over there.
Yep.
Am I at the right point? Oh God,
Yeah.
what's over there? And um
The sun's
that
coming
that
up, but there's a big bank of cloud on the horizon that's not forecast, etc. Yeah.
exactly. And I've prided myself over the years to like take advantage of what you have when you're out there. Sometimes that's not shooting. I have gotten to working on that Zen photographer of sometimes I don't take my camera out, but I won't sometimes. But
Sure.
I also find that you learn to eventually take advantage of whatever you have when you're at a place sometimes. And if you can
Yeah.
walk away with images you're proud of, even if the sky isn't exploding or the waves aren't crashing, that's growth as a photographer.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But
so
being able to
it,
take a shot in any kind of conditions is where I
mhm,
see a photographer's growth getting to the point where they're okay, they're now maturing as a photographer.
exactly. And any skill that you want to learn, you have to have resistance, right? You
Yeah.
have to practice and you have
Mhm.
to be put in uncomfortable situations.
Exactly.
And teaching music years ago, it's the same idea. If you want to practice something slow and get faster and faster, and you
Hmm.
need to practice your scales and all of that. Or if you work out, you're adding weight constantly. Getting over being bummed about bad conditions or something not being 100% right and focusing on challenging yourself as a photographer is going to go miles, and that's going to,
Absolutely.
really make you grow and get better. So, but for planning, I do find that if it is nightscapes, there's a lot more planning to it.
Yeah,
I
of
keep an eye,
course. If you
I
want,
keep
if
an
you want to line
eye
that Milky Way up, you got to know where it's going to be at what time.
e-
Yeah,
exactly. And that's one of those like genres I've shot a lot of, but I don't shoot much anymore. It's more of just,
sure.
there's lots of pros and cons of shooting nightscapes, but I love them, but it's one of those more technical ones. And I've been finding naturally that, yeah, the more I have to plan that stuff, the less of it being a therapeutic and rejuvenating experience for me.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
In terms of going into the field with that concept and then coming away disappointed that you didn't quite get the conditions, or you were doing an astro shoot and the clouds came over and you just had foggy conditions, for example, how do you deal with that disappointment where you have actually made that plan, you've got that image in your mind? Is it, oh, I'll come back next time and, you know, that's it? Or do you, how do you deal with it?
I think nowadays I push myself to come to find other images,
Mm.
other photos to be made. I also try to enjoy being in nature too. Enjoy just being on the edge of the lake, overlooking the thing, hearing the waves, whatever it is.
Yep.
That's a harder one, of course, especially if you're like spending money and time traveling. It's the first time to Iceland and it's just rainy the whole time. Whatever, I get it.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to deal with, but oh man, I feel again that I try to find other images I can shoot. Pull out a different lens. If it's like a nightscape thing like what you're talking about, there's other opportunities to be had if there's clouds moving in the sky. I
Yep.
like to do a lot of low level lighting, so
Sure.
clouds and other things can give you other opportunities to
Mm.
light it differently or do something like that. And then there's always oh, I remember this spot. This was a scouting mission. I'm just gonna have a beverage and enjoy myself and come back next time, you know.
Yeah. 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 I think that enjoyment of nature is one of the skills that, and I call it a skill because it's something that you can learn, because there's a lot of people that wander through natural environments, and to me, I can't see how they can be enjoying it because they're walking around with their nose in their phone, or they're walking around with a boombox listening to thrash metal or whatever it is that they're listening to. And you go,
Or even their faces behind their camera the whole time. You
yeah,
know, like it can be just as bad if you're staring through your wide angle and you're at the
absolutely.
most beautiful
Yeah.
viewpoint
Yeah,
ever, right?
they're
Yeah.
spending more time behind the camera than they are actually enjoying themselves. And to me, as I say, it's a skill that's learned. How have you developed that skill for yourself?
I was just thinking as you were saying that I'm just again very blessed to live in Oregon,
Yeah, like,
because
living in a nice place like that helps. Yeah.
because my office I can see the west side of Portland, so I can tell. I open my window, I can see if the clouds are forming or if we're going to get some light.
Sure, sure.
And even here in Portland, we have a West Hills, so I have a couple spots where even if it's like I can just 5-10 minutes down the road be on a little river with some foliage and a nice view that I shoot regularly as like it's like my little just go to
Yeah.
spot. But so trying to I'd be remiss if I was like, oh, it's really easy. Just no, man, because I live here. But
Yeah.
I feel like it's like we said, it's sometimes putting the electronics away and just being in that moment.
Mm.
And I feel like the one of the issues stems from people seeing all this work on social media
Yep.
who aren't natural people who haven't spent time in nature. That's which is fine, right? But it's people don't quite understand also that connection to it yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have people go and visit Yosemite National Park or Glacier National Park. They see all these pictures, but they've only ever lived in a city their whole life or don't understand. They're just not connected in that way.
Yeah.
And so if you have photographers who see a picture, they book a flight, they do a thing, it's going to be much harder for them to connect to nature that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
and I feel like those sorts of situations, I'm a big fan of photo workshops, asterisks, good photo workshops.
Yeah.
They are opportunities to be able to let go and have somebody guide you around and give you an opportunity to just focus on like photography
Mm-hmm.
and or even doing non-photography hikes and other things like that that would help you connect more, let go of the camera for a minute but it's hard. I get it. People like have schedules are tight. Like I said, you're traveling a lot. People have to plan, and if you get one weekend a month and you show up to your spot that you've been dreaming about for weeks and it sucks.
Yeah.
It's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, definitely. How would you define success in your photography?
Oh, geez, I have to be like really honest. Like, it's not part of my vocabulary.
Okay.
I'm not trying to cop out on
No,
you,
no,
but
that's fine. Any answer is a good answer.
yeah, I'm sure that I have compass points, things
Mhm.
that are pointing me directions. Actually, there's 5,000 directions constantly. But are they, I don't know, man. Are they meant for success? I don't even know anymore. I found that I think in my past, success used to equal engagement, used to equal likes, used to equal a lot of things that like
Yep.
external factors that I've had to again come to like this Zen, like I have no control over those things anymore.
Hmm.
And so those sorts of successes I was imagining dictated what I was doing on social media and what I was doing with my work and what I
Sure.
was doing in my head and what I was doing in my heart.
Yeah.
So I feel like COVID, man, COVID was was a big factor in a lot of changing of brain chemicals. We'll just say that. Like the
Yep.
world changed, and
Yep.
whether it was like macro or micro, and I feel like there was a point that even for me, who was working in live events, that being my primary source of income,
Hmm.
and doing photography, and I was starting to teach, and I was pushing my photography business at the time. But
Yep.
so to have a world changing event that prevented people from being like next to people when I work in live events. I never thought something like that could occur.
Yeah. It
Ec-
took a lot of people
Wars,
by surprise. Yeah.
yeah, wars, economic meltdown, all that stuff. Sure, live events. There's still always like a bar with
Yeah.
people getting drunk, listening to somebody playing an instrument, and you
Yep.
couldn't even do that.
Yeah.
So it was a big thing for me. It was like at the time up until COVID hit, I was flying in 2019. I had 100 flights
Wow.
or like 105 flights or something. I was traveling that much, and
Yeah.
I was my career there was doing great, but I was busy. I was gone, and then it was like record scratch,
Yep.
and that was an opportunity to reflect, man. So what coming back around to the idea of success at that point, I didn't even know if I was going to have a job anymore or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
career. I didn't know if we were going to turn into zombies, and I didn't know what was going to happen. So I think that was an opportunity to let go of what success was and
Yeah. Sure.
focus more on keeping yourself fed a little bit. And now with photography, after all that and going through things, I think for me, it's about releasing work. That's like my new mantra, my new vibe for the year is like produce, not so much produce more work, it's like finish and put out more work.
Yeah. Right.
Really. And I also was super lucky in between 2018 and 19. I shot a lot of photos. I'm sitting on years of unedited images.
Hmm.
Getting back to this idea of circling back to planning and getting out and shooting, I've been leaning into processing and working here, getting
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
images I've already shot done. There's plenty of work to do there.
Mm.
And I juggle that sometimes. Sometimes it's, yeah, I could go out and chase the light, have that experience. But I've also now amassed a lot of work that I'm really proud of that's not done yet.
Yeah.
And I take my time with my work. I let it marinate. I like to smoke my meat, not microwave it. So yeah, that's long answer short. Or yeah, that's
No, as I say, any answer is a good answer.
yeah, man.
In terms of, I guess, that expressionism in your art or the expression of an emotion, what is the primary emotion that you're trying to express with most of your images? Or does it depend on the image, and it's just different every time.
Mm. I think
Personally,
that.
I feel that there is a primary one, but I'm not going to tell you what I think until
Oh
you.
yeah, yeah, okay. I want to. Yeah, I love to hear it. I think sometimes it's excitement.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times when like the images that I'm releasing, like 90% of the time, my excitement behind the camera is just jubilant. It's
Yep.
all over the place, either inside or outside. I've been known to curse and yell when I've seen certain things happen naturally before me. So I think maybe that's the first one in my head is excitement or something like that. Wow, look how beautiful nature is, or wow, look at this show she's putting on. So that's a but yeah, man, I think that's the first place I go. And like I said, I'm attracted still to the big wide angle, like expansive, unique views,
Mm-hmm.
which I it's interesting because like my it also comes from my photographer, like concert photography world, where most of my work was either fisheye, really wide angle, bands, lights, crowd, people having a great time,
Yeah,
or
the whole
I
scene.
used to 70 to 200 fingers on fretboards, expressions small. So now in
Yeah.
my nature work, I'm like,
Individual sweat beads dripping down the face or
yeah,
something.
man. So to me, that's like the equivalent of like ultra wide fern in front of a waterfall, or macro or really tight, compressed, more abstract stuff. And that's where I love to be in my work. And to me, that's extrapolating this almost psychedelic, almost otherworldly thing that is naturally occurring. It's
Yeah.
all around us. Of course, again, utilizing the tools we have to really get that point across.
Yeah, you pretty much
Yeah, what's
know
your
what you pretty much know what I was going to say, particularly with the wow. It's wow, check out what I'm able to see. Check this out. Don't you wish you were standing?
exactly? That's the beauty of photography, right? Is
Yeah,
that it's a selfish slash egotistical art form. It's look at what I'm looking at.
yeah,
And I think that's to me what's really powerful behind it. It's how I see the world in a frame, in a single
yep.
square, rectangle, whatever you want it to be. It's this is how I see the world right now. Look at it. Look at this photograph. Oh my god, that's like that meme. But yeah, I feel like it's almost our responsibility in a lot of ways, or it is a responsibility, if I could rephrase that, as a photographer, that it is how we are choosing to show people the world. And
Absolutely. Yeah,
I love to hear that I got that across to you.
definitely.
Yeah, man.
You mentioned you don't do a lot of composite work. Where do you stand with that enhancement of images? Obviously, there's a lot of people that I guess right into that totally naturalistic. Here's almost a raw file view of the image. Very minimal processing. You said you take a long time in your processing. That sounds to me like you're at the other end of the spectrum, not necessarily adding color and light and other elements, but I guess where do you sit on that spectrum, or where do you feel you sit on that spectrum?
I it's been a moving target over the years. I think currently one of my main threads in that conversation is mainly about if it couldn't happen, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, so
I did
no northern lights over Big
the
Sur.
southern skies, that sort of thing. I when I do my nightscape work, sometimes I'll shoot the Milky Way separately, but from the same location, and it's natural and it can
Yep,
happen
yep,
because I don't want to lie to anybody.
yeah,
I don't believe in lying is a strong word, but people have the responsibility again to be honest about the work they're
yeah,
putting out.
absolutely.
Um, that's my main bit. I've grown some great relationships, uh, especially the last couple of years in Web3 with composite artists
Mm-hmm.
who I have grown to really respect more, and I've been able to open my mind a little bit beyond what is just photography and
Yep.
and more art forms. But they're people who are like they call themselves composite artists. They're
Yeah.
not
Or
like,
digital
there's not,
artists.
and they're also people. So I know some people like Kath Samard who literally hike mountains to get the bits and pieces. Yeah, sure, her image might be composited, but
It's
the
not
work
lazy
and
composite.
effort and time, exactly. And that's a big one for me too about things, is to not be lazy.
Yeah.
I think that's why my work takes so long.
Hmm.
Less about perfection, more about not being lazy. If I'm gonna take the time to clone out one dust speck, I better do them all, because that's just being lazy if you don't. I
Exactly.
think it's, I was like grown up, I was like brought up that way. Don't sweep it under the bed. Like, why do a job? If you're not gonna do a job, don't do it at all.
Yeah.
So for me in processing, that's the reason why a lot of times it takes lots of time. And I try to decipher it between creative vision and technicalities.
Mm.
I try not to get perfection and all of that wrapped up in the creative bit. Do my best. It's hard sometimes, but it's more so technical stuff, right? Horizon lines, edge lines. It's, man, if you're gonna spend the time, I want it to be technically perfect. I
Yeah.
think that's more of a real thing I look for, and is a constant goal to be technically perfect. And
Yeah.
that's just like any other skill in life, right? If you play guitar, or you're a tennis player, or climber, or hiker, there's perfection in technical skills. That
Yeah. You've
is
got to
why
put
we
the
do.
hours in to get that technical capability to let
Exactly.
your natural talent then shine through.
In processing and getting better at it, that's always where the beginning of my processing journey starts.
Okay. In terms of where you live, how you shoot, what you shoot, and also a little bit about how you process, which is the most important to you in terms of what drives the other? So is it where you live drives what you shoot and therefore how you shoot, or is how you want to shoot drives where you live and then drives what you want to shoot?
Yeah, I definitely, I would say, I feel like I'm lucky to be in the location I'm in, and I've lucky been able to travel and live a fairly non-expensive life. I've 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 prioritized certain things in my life that have given me opportunities to go to a lot of these places. I there's a chance that I won't always be here in Oregon my whole life. As we get older, you start to realize those things sometimes. And
Yep.
for me, I would love to make a choice. That would be the dream. The retirement, quote unquote, would be me
Yep.
being able to make a conscious choice to move somewhere strictly for photography. Oh, yeah. I already know where it is. It's like central southern Oregon coast.
Okay.
It's on the coast. I love the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to be driving distance from the ocean. So I guess that maybe answers your question a little bit, is I need to be able to drive to the ocean
Yeah.
wherever I
Yeah.
live. So like Utah, it's beautiful. Desert, Arizona, I like to visit, but I love it in the
You don't want
Pacific
to live there.
Northwest.
Yeah.
No, I don't
Sure.
want to live there. No, it's like gray and rainy.
Yep.
My skin isn't dry. There's all sorts of benefits, and the Pacific Ocean is just, I could shoot only that my whole life, man.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I could find everything I would ever need to shoot up and down the Oregon coast, and I'd be happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk
I
to
know
me
you
about.
love the seascapes, right?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely a seascape guy. If I don't regularly get knee deep in salt water, I've got a real problem.
Yeah, man. It's something that a lot of people don't get to experience.
Yeah.
And it's a different type of shooting.
Oh, very much so.
Standing on an edge cliff looking over a valley is great and all, but you get on, I don't know if you wear any sort of like wet gator or waders or like
Uh,
socks or
I've
anything, but
got a set of rock shoes which they've got little cleats in the bottom of
studs
them.
on them. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so they're made for rock. I have an affinity with rock fishermen, so we get a lot of
Okay.
people here
Oh, that's
around
cool.
the coast that go fishing, and quite often they're the only other people I see at pre-dawn because they're out there trying to snag a meal or whatever. I'm out there trying to snag a bit of light. And yeah, I've got those. They're like neoprene rock boots, and
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
yeah, no,
Yeah, I'm jealous. I'm jealous. You like that sounds I remember those days of like having a little place that you could go to and the only
yeah,
other people there were like a local who was like
yeah,
fishing or something and there's still some nooks and crannies around me, but those are the days, man, where you could still have those little secret spots, you know.
yeah.
I'm sure that's why I want to live on the Oregon coast because then I will know I'll have those spots too, right? Where the tourists
That's
aren't.
exactly right. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of places I can go where I can find people if I want to.
Sure, yeah.
There's
I've
always
always
an early morning jog
are you in you're in Australia or New Zealand?
in Australia in
Australia,
Sydney. So yeah,
in Sydney. Oh man, yeah. I've it's been a dream of meen to get down there one of these days.
you
I'm
should come
working on
over. It's worthwhile.
it. I've actually what's beautiful thing about Web3 and I've been like I have grown my I've grown some great relationships with a lot of other artists, photographers all across the world, more so
Yeah.
than any other social media that I've ever
Mhm.
had. And I've grown good friendships with people down there. And it's really just really cool to get that vibe and your guys' culture and things in the mix. And again, I'm in like DM threads with people across different time zones where it's like people are tagging off, like, all right, see you later, United States. And then the
Yep.
Aussies come in talk a bunch of shit all night. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but it's my first one. I'm actually surprised. I'm usually a potty mouth, but I'm envious. I've since I was a kid, I always wanted to visit there. Can't lie, it was probably Crocodile Dundee that made me want to go down that street.
I got to say, a lot of that is frowned on by Australians. They look at it and go,
I'm
"Yeah,
sure I've realized you don't want to go down there and be like, "Where's Peter? What's his name? I forget. It's a national treasure, isn't he? I don't know.
yeah, yeah." But
Don't want to get beat up by anybody.
no, that's right. If you do get down here, hit me up. We'll
Yeah,
definitely
man.
find a little seascape spot. There's a couple of little beaches I know. They sometimes get crowded, but sometimes you can get there and you're the only person on the beach, and it's
Well, the beauty. I don't know about you, but the beauty of seascapes is you don't need a lot. You don't need iconic things to
no,
shoot seascapes a lot of the times. And
yeah,
this is me being lucky that I have the coast here and I have lots of options. But the reality is I've some of my most favorite crazy wide angle shots were a couple stones in a foreground with
yep,
something in the background and some good light and a wave.
yeah,
And that was like nowhere near a popular spot, right?
yeah,
And water water creates such unique compositions. um you can come up with come away with 100 different images that you're like that could be bangers, as they say. So
I got a hard drive full of
yeah, exactly, like
bangers to be, I call them.
yeah, and it goes like you get a great composition and you can just lay on the shutter and every wave turn move is a new ooh
Absolutely,
image.
yeah,
And a lot of those, yeah, of course, you want to go see icons, but the coast is changing all the time. That even those icons are a lot different than the last time you were there because of erosion and waves and
well, just
whatever.
you go there at 6 to 8 weeks apart, and the tides have changed, so
Yep.
everything looks different in high tide than it does in low tide, and the mid tides look different to either of those. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's why I'm so drawn to it. And
mm.
like and other colleagues, friends who are into seascapes, it's always that it's just a different. There's so much dynamics there. There's so many it changes so much that it's hard to get sick of.
Mm.
And I'm buddies with Nick Page, and I've done a couple. I did a workshop with him, like I went on one with him on the Oregon coast, and then helped him co-lead one once. And I've dipped in because like he always throws one near my birthday, and I usually go on a coastal run on my own. And you talk to him, and he's taken people to these spots for years and years. That like every year is different,
Yeah,
every year is unique. Even he is somebody who never gets bored with it either. And I love seascapes, and I love that as the I love being able to introduce people to that too. People
absolutely, yeah, and
who have never even seen the ocean, who are photographers, and I'm like, God, you got to come here. And then we can go to a mountain and a river and a
waterfall
bunch
or
of other
whatever.
things. Yeah,
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I like where I am. I'm about an hour's drive from the sea, but I'm also slightly less than an hour's drive from some of the nicest waterfall country here in the
Oh,
district.
that's
So
awesome.
I can pick and choose depending. If it's raining, I don't go to the beach. I go to the waterfalls. If it's
Hmm.
looking like a sunny day, I'm down at the beach. So
Yeah, it's pretty. It sounds very similar to here in Portland, this part of the Pacific Northwest, man.
yeah, not quite the same dramatic changes in weather though. Where
Yeah, yeah,
we
we
don't
do. They used to
get
be
a
more
lot of
stable,
fog.
but climate change and
Yeah,
things,
that's it.
weirdness.
Don't get a lot of snow. Though occasionally up on the Blue Mountains, which is the that waterfall region I was talking about, we do get the odd.
Yeah,
It's a dusting.
it's a crazy experience because I remember the first time I moved out here from the East Coast and went up to Mount Hood, our main volcanic mountain over here, and in August put my feet in snow for the
Hmm.
first time. Or if I
Yeah,
guess for you that'd be whatever your peak of summer is. And it was like, wow, I've never experienced something like that. It's pretty wild, man. It's really lucky, blessed to be out here. I will only leave here if I have to.
sure. What's your most memorable shooting experience?
Oh. Hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking on that one.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's fine. Take your time. As I say, this is the bit that gets edited out.
Yeah, exactly. It's like life flashing before my eyes, trying to go
Yeah,
through the
yeah.
catalogs.
Which bit's the highlight?
I think I think one of the there's a lot of memorable experiences. It's hard for anybody to answer a question like that, but
That's why I ask it. I like.
you got to drop it, man. But I'm gonna try to give you as like a true. I want to give you like a really honest answer, I think, and I think it was when, man, I think one of my most memorable images was probably. Hold on a second.
Yeah, yeah,
I almost want to open up Lightroom real quick.
yeah. Go for it.
I'm gonna cheat. I'm
That's
gonna
totally
cheat.
fine.
Yeah, it's gotta be that one. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, one of my most memorable images, huh? It's a really hard one. I think I have to go with this image, Howling Dog's Throne. It was actually, it was the first time that I actually got to meet Nick Page,
Okay.
and I was on a workshop with him. And this image, like this experience of seeing, let me set the story here. We had been out shooting waterfalls all day, and it
Hmm.
had been really overcast and crappy out, and we were about half an hour inland. And it was like, okay, guys, let's pack it up. Let's start heading back, try to get sunset. And everybody, it was like really bummed. The location of this place. This is Here I am knocking icons, and now I'm like talking about an iconic location as being one of my most memorable images. But this place banned in Oregon. And so everybody was really excited and it was really gray and everybody was really bummed. And then we got to the location just as the clouds were breaking enough on the sky that the sun started to peek through. And
Yep.
there's another image I have called Rise, and I actually released three of these images shot the same night as one of my one-on-one NFT drops.
Yep.
And this first image, Rise, is actually the conditions that we like had walked up to. And I had never, it was one of those, wow, just I couldn't even really think of what to do when I first saw the skies at this point.
Yeah. Right.
So this image, Howling Dog's Throne, though, this was one of those this was one of those images that I was verbally excited about. Definitely dropped many F bombs. And the sky just kept morphing and changing, and the reflections were shimmering and moving. And it was just this experience of being with a couple other people too, that I think helped that memory be something even more. It was something that all of us had, a couple of us had been there numerous times. This was the third time I'd been there, but the first time out with Nick, and it was like I'd always wanted to go to this place, but this situation of everything lining up, having the perfect amount of water in front of it reflecting, and the sky. I have so many images from this night, but this one for me was the cream of the crop in terms of I've never seen conditions like this before at this location ever since. Now, I'm sure there are others like it, but this one's mine. This is my memory.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with, this is 2018. I really started to settle in as like seascapes and shooting the ocean, shooting the
Yep.
sea. It's when I really like the passion really started to form. And this trip had a big part in that. And Nick had a big part in that in my
Yeah. Yeah.
photographic path.
Cool.
So yeah, that's it's one of my most memorable photos. There are so many more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's cool to have like an image like that as a creator be able to bring you back. And
Yeah.
I
Definitely.
feel like I do spend some time. Sometimes I open up Lightroom and just scroll back through old catalogs or old collections, or and I'll just look at them, just more a memory based thing now.
Yeah.
And that's like my editing process sometimes too. Like some days I could go to, we have with thrift shops. I don't know if you have. I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not talking like a third world country, but yeah, thrift shops, right? Where you
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. We have
I'm
that.
gonna go. I'm gonna go shopping, but I don't know what I'm gonna get.
Yeah.
Like a thrift shop, you go in and you're like, ooh, pair of boots that fit me. Ooh, look at this blender that I've always wanted that works.
Yep.
Sometimes that's my editing flow. Is I'll open up Lightroom, look at my catalog, and find something that like tickles my fancy, like something that I want to sink my teeth into a little bit.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time organizing. Also, I wouldn't say time, but I put a lot of effort in building dynamic collections in Lightroom. Lots of filtering, lots of things. I have an editing queue. I'm very workflow oriented, even
Yeah. Right.
though when I actually get down and do it, I'm very fluid. So I build workflows for myself so
Yep.
I can let go when I want to actually create.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think it goes back to my life, it goes back to my experience playing and teaching music. It's this
Hmm.
idea of if you want to improvise music and you want to solo or play jazz or do
Yep.
whatever, right? If you want to create music on the fly, you spend all this time practicing, doing scales,
Yeah.
uh,
You need
finding
to understand the music to be able to, and how to make it to be able to improvise and take it to the next level. Yeah.
exactly. I have some very, no, I wouldn't say rigid workflows, but structures that I've built on my process from shooting to export
Yeah.
that I lean on, and it allows me to have less anxiety about editing.
Yep.
Um, it allows me to, okay, if I have an urge to do a certain type of work one day, I know what folders or what work I have in the editing
Yeah.
queue
Got it.
that I can like work on.
Yep.
I spend a
I
lot of time in Lightroom.
guess, I guess talking about the workflow, is there anything in particular that you might do that you think might be different to others? And if so, why do you do those? If it's not different, what does the workflow look like? For example, if you've just turned up at one of your favorite spots and off you go, what are you looking for? What are you
Oh,
thinking?
okay.
Where are you going to put your tripod? Yeah.
Yeah, my workflow in the field has a lot to do with trying to observe light. I think
Yep.
the first goal is like looking at how light is hitting things in the background, midground, foreground, trying to anticipate where it's going to be
Yep.
to try to plan and start to look for compositions.
Uh-huh.
And then once I find A couple compositions I'm into is when I start to pull the camera out. Depends how late I am. If I'm just like, oh God, I got to pull the camera out and start shooting. But I try not to. I try to like walk around, look at things, calm down,
Mm-hmm.
breathe a little bit, because usually you're excited. Oh God, I can't wait to
Look at
see the
this in
most.
front of me. I want to
Yeah,
show that to somebody.
exactly. So calming down, finding your. I'm a big proponent of flow state. If you've
Mhm.
ever looked into flow state or heard people talk about it, but it also comes from music. I think it comes from my
Definitely.
time playing and improvising and being in a state where your brain is like fully receptive to everything, and being in a state where creating is like a dopamine hit almost.
Yeah,
And when you can like leverage all parts of your brain, like memory, mechanics, and creativity, like it can stimulate you. And I think
absolutely.
that goes is always like the dragon that's being chased in the field. I feel like trying to
Yeah.
be calm, but also trying to flow and trying to like move with things and try to pay attention. And as you're shooting seascapes, you have to keep your head on a swivel. You
Yep.
have to constantly be looking. If you're shooting near water ever, I have lost gear, almost lost my life. I've seen people get you need to pay attention when you're shooting near dangerous things like that. And I feel like being able to center yourself and just calm down and take a moment to walk around is a very big part of my
Sure.
workflow like that. And then when it comes to shooting, I'm like, I I'll say I don't do it all the time, but if I'm shooting more wide angle shots, tripod type, my typical style of work, I'm shooting for exposures and then I'm shooting for focus stacks. And
Yep.
I always shoot them in the same order. I try to get my base exposure and then make sure I'm not clipping my highlights. If I
Yep.
need to get some more shadow detail, I'll take another exposure. And then if I'm going to focus stack, go get my closest shot, rip through the shots, and then review them. And
Yeah.
then if it's like a situation with like seascapes where you're not so much focus stacking as much, and you're taking a bunch of water shots, I'll try to not beat the dead horse and try to like take enough that I feel really good about and then move on and explore. But I
Yeah.
try to have that process so I'm not fumbling with my camera. I'm not spending too much time doing, and I'm spending my energy and like self creating, which goes back to taking the time at home, getting comfortable with your equipment. I remember back when I first started shooting, like I'd spend so much time in the lab just pulling a camera out on a tripod next to me on the computer, looking, hitting buttons, taking pictures, and like
Trying to
taking
work
it
out
out to
what
my,
everything
you know,
did.
exactly. And this is me thinking like a musician, or thinking like really even in my live event world and the skills
Yep.
that I'm doing, it's all about repetition and comfort.
Yeah.
You don't want the instrument, the tool, the paintbrush to get in the way of creating.
Yeah.
So,
Being able to use your equipment in the dark. So when
mhm,
even down to where you put your filters, I have a 4 or 5 pocket filter bag, and every time I
exactly.
take a filter off, it goes back in the place it came out of, so that I know tomorrow morning when it's dark, I can go to that pocket and that filter will be the right one.
You hope it's there.
I hope it's there. Yeah.
That's my problem. Is I'm like I knew it was there. But I was gonna say too. I am exceptionally anal about my pack. Not
Yep.
so much like more so like I put a lot of energy into how, what, where, when, and how, why, where everything goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been using f-stop packs for years, and I have multiple inserts for different things I'd be doing. And I used to
Mm-hmm.
do a lot, like I used to do more time lapse. I was do videos sometimes. I have different packs, different kits to bring with me,
Yeah.
but
Right.
it's all about like repetition and keeping things in a structured form that don't need to be creative, right?
Yep.
Like you don't need to waste your time being creative, setting up your pack every day.
Yep.
So spending the time finding that works for you, going out and shooting, and then taking that time, like when we talk about workflow, the most important part is doing some debrief on what you just went through.
Yeah.
So that's where it's like getting your images, culling them. I cull most of my images, or at least start rating stuff as fast as possible, and
Yep.
then they'll sit forever. Excuse me. But like with the getting these non-creative, like annoying things
Yep.
into personal workflows will make you grow as a photographer faster than you could imagine.
Absolutely.
And it will make photography be more fun, and you could be more creative if you do boring, uncreative stuff at other times, right? So
Exactly.
it's that same idea of you want to do a triple Lutz, so you got to go a double Lutz first.
Yeah.
So
Well, you got to nail the single first, and then the doubles.
yeah, you got to be able to ice skate first or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I taught a couple, taught a couple digital courses during COVID about workflow. And it's one of my more like, I'm, I haven't been able to work on it much this year, but it is maybe another one of my 2023 goals is like, I want to actually put out some classes and courses about this idea of workflow
Yeah. Yeah.
and this idea of creative flow and how they're like intertwined
Yeah.
and like how to find flow state by doing rigid, repeatable workflow things. Because
Absolutely.
I think the magic is when you're out with people and people get to experience that first time of being completely in the zone, as some say, the true flow state. It's just a magical experience. And I just hope people get to, you can experience it in all places in your life once you understand how to recognize it.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
you can be in the zone doing dishes, you could
Yep.
be in the zone vacuuming, and once you start to see those points in your life, I feel like it to me it was life changing. It was one of those. It actually one of what kind of put me on to flow state was listening to a podcast with Alistair Ben. I think is the
Yep.
first time I heard about it. And then again, I heard about it with, I'm brain farting. Oh, he's from Utah and he writes a lot and he's a photographer. He was just on a podcast with Matt and Alex. I'm just going to look it up so that way
Yeah, that's
I'll look it
fun.
up later. I love his writing and listening to him talk. Okay, so the other time I heard about flow state was Guy Tao.
Ah, yeah.
And
Yep.
Guy Tao, I could listen to him talk so much, and he just gets me excited about creating, to hear the almost like mathematical science interpretation of it. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is about it, but it just jazzes me up to
Mm.
think about thinking like that. And it was in 2020 where I was like, it hit. I was in that point of lockdown where I was like, I've eaten everything. I played all the video games. I've done all the things.
I
Now what?
finished Netflix.
Yeah, I found the end of Netflix even. Now what do I do? And I started working on my website and I was like, what? I'm going to finally build my own website from the ground up. And I spent most of 2020 doing that. But I also was like, I was having issues being like productive anymore. It was in that point where I was just like, okay, I need to put on real pants and do something,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
couldn't. And then I heard about this and I started researching a little bit about flow state. And then I found this podcast that's called Flow State. The guy who produces it is a DJ music producer. And he's also studies philosophy and psychology.
Cool.
And essentially he puts together, his podcast is based around this thing called the Pomodoro method. Have you
Okay.
heard of that before?
I have heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's this concept of doing 15, 30 minutes of focused work
Yep.
and 5-minute breaks, right? Or some fixed amount of breaks. So
Yeah.
the idea is turn off all distractions, all screens, except for the task at hand, and focus on that. And what he does is he produces musical playlists to help drive you through that work session.
Yeah.
And in between the breaks, he talks about people who write and study flow state and other sorts of topics like that. And he's a very worded person And he has turned me on to other writers and other podcasts and other ideas. And that was a point where I started to see how we have these cycles of, you can focus on a specific task at hand,
Yeah.
and you have to be clear about the tasks, and you have to put the effort into do the pre-production, as we
Yeah. You
say
got to
in
know
live
what you're
events.
doing when you start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you need to be challenged enough. You need to have enough. You don't want it to be too easy. You don't get into flow state by things being simple. They need to be hard enough for you to feel like you accomplished something,
Mm,
but not so hard that you can't, because then you get frustrated and now you're not in flow state anymore.
exactly.
Yeah, man. I feel like even the other day, I was listening to a podcast with Guy Tao, and I hear this guy talk, and I just love, he gets me excited about photography and creating differently than any other photographer. And
Awesome.
his work is amazing too. It's a whole other thing. It's cool to get that excitement from something other than just somebody's work. And
Absolutely.
I hope one day to hit that point for somebody to be able to have the work and the art, I don't know, or
Yeah.
stand on their different things.
Well, I learned something from you this morning. Actually. So I was looking through your Twitter feed for a couple of hints on something to ask you about, and one of the things that jumped out at me was a recent tweet that you put up about negative ions and their beneficial impact on people, and the way that waterfalls and ocean spray and all the rest of that contains these negative ions. Talk to me about that, because it just sounds interesting. And I know a lot of people might think, oh, yeah, it's just pseudoscience and all the rest of that. But I guess I'm interested to know more.
Yeah. This new project I've been working on for basically ever, because like it's based around water and motion. Can I grab a drink of water real quick? You
Yeah,
got one
you're
second?
right. No,
Okay.
no problem.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So this new project I've been working on, negative ions, something I'm just releasing tomorrow. I'm not sure when this podcast comes out, but it's mid-January, and the I got turned on to the idea of negative ions from an old photographer friend I used to follow on Instagram, and it
Sure.
was one of this idea that waterfalls can be healing,
Mm-hmm.
but there's actually like science behind, and this is me speaking as a non-scientist, but there are science behind and physics behind the idea of how molecules could be ionized when they're physically slammed into each other. And so situations like, or scenes like waterfalls and waves crashing, and water is a big source of this because they're simple molecules, and it's easy for them to lose an electron, which essentially that electron attaches to an air molecule and then makes that molecule the actual negative ion. So it's like negatively charged, and it attaches itself to heavier ions and heavier molecules and makes them fall to the ground, and in which case filters the air around it. And it's one of those no duh, right? If you've ever gone to a waterfall and a little stream, anything, big one, small one,
Mm-hmm.
usually feel pretty good. And there's probably many reasons why, right? Whether it was a walk or just being out in nature, all these things. But for me, this topic of negative ions is giving me like a creative thread to release different sets of images that are going to just be related to this concept of negative ions, but not all be the same style or type of image.
Yeah. Yeah.
This first set of images are all waterfalls, and I'm lucky to have a lot of waterfall images where I live. So I'm releasing a total of 5 images, and they're in different quantities, different supplies for people,
Sure.
and each one represents a point in my life where I had experienced the therapeutic benefits of being like in nature at that waterfall. And
Yep.
the beauty of being like a nature photographer is that we usually get to experience these phenomenon with our camera. But again, seems like a great opportunity to have a creative theme to release work for. And most of the work's already been shot. It's more organizationally allows me to finally have, like, I don't put out a lot of images anymore unless there is a theme or some story behind them.
Yeah. Right.
Um, I don't post a lot on most of the social medias anymore unless I have something to say.
Mhm.
And that's been a process of me letting go of having the engagement. And I want to, the work I put out, I want to have intention behind it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fun project I'm working on. I'm like, it's been so much work to put together a successful drop in Web3 and NFTs, especially considering the market and where we're at. And it takes a lot to pull them off. And I'm hoping it goes well. It starts tomorrow, but I put a lot of effort in again, like I said, the intention behind what I'm doing with my work and to try to make the art be the number one priority.
Yeah. Got it.
Um, but I go back to music, writing songs, coming up with an idea, and you could write a simple song with a sentence, but you want to flesh that out, or you want to elaborate on that. And there's something to be said, or even if you look at it like songs on an album, that's maybe
Yep.
more of a better example of, yeah, you listen to one song, but you can't beat like a great album. You can't beat
Yeah. There's
the effort,
always,
like
yeah,
somebody
there's
puts in the
always
effort to
the odd one.
choose which songs go
Yeah.
where. And a lot of times an album, there could be 20 tracks and they make it 7. So to me, I think it's one of the things I've really enjoyed in Web3 art for
Yep.
me has been a push to come up with an idea of a collection. And I know people have been doing this in galleries forever. I just have not been a successful fine art print salesperson. I've
Yep.
had more success in digital art. And coming from the dredges of Instagram and Facebook, like, I've been able to now have a platform to put together work in different forms like that and have it mean something a little bit more than just being like pretty picture.
Yeah. Cool. How do you handle hitting creative walls?
Oh, I think the creative wall thing, one of the biggest breakthroughs I had was the flow state
Yep.
example I was talking about earlier. Like, figuring out a way to work through efficiently blocks is really important, especially when you need to get stuff done, right?
Absolutely.
When it's a passion thing, it's a little harder because there's no deadline. There's nobody like poking you saying, I need you to be more creative and productive, Jordan, you know. But finding a way to, like, workflows for me, I lean back on them to help get through ruts and
Yeah.
blocks.
Yeah.
And being able to figure out a way to practice finding like a flow state with your
Hmm.
work. Again, like, if you can get away from the anxiety of creating, if you can take the tools and get them out of your way, you're good enough with the paintbrush, it's not there anymore.
Yep.
And then all you're left with at that point, hopefully, is the ability to create. But this isn't always possible. Sometimes it takes stepping away. Sometimes it takes, there's longer threads in the story too. I feel like in short term, there is creative blocks that happen that you can deal with.
Yep.
But in a longer story, it's more of an ebb and flow where in some points in my life, I'm very productive.
Yep.
In some points in my life, I'm very creative.
Yeah.
So I've learned to lean on them. I'm like, I take my temperature and go, why can't I process images right now? Oh, it's because I need to get outside and make them.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Sometimes it's I'm totally jazzed and stoked on editing, or I know I need to focus in that zone, and I can tell, not all the time, but I can tell as I get better at this where my vibe is at. And a lot of times it comes down to like when you acknowledge that you're hitting a wall,
Mm.
that's the that's where you do something else, or
Yeah, I
that's
think
the
that first step of recognition is
yeah.
critical, because if you
What
don't
it
recognize it, you just run into them.
yeah, what do they say about addicts? First step to recovery is admitting you have a problem.
I
But
definitely
yeah,
have a problem.
yeah.
Photography is an addiction,
Oh, it is.
and sometimes an
It
expensive one.
it can be. Yeah, it is its own sort of dopamine hit. We can't deny that fact, and acknowledging those things help you, I think, work through. A lot of times when you hit creative blocks or times like that, they're auxiliary to the actual art,
Yep.
and a lot of times it's maybe you're not skilled enough to work through it. Maybe it's a I don't it could be you not being able to make an image look a certain way, or you don't even know where to start with an image.
Yeah.
It's they're all their unique situations. So I would highly suggest people look into, like I said, flow state. This idea, you can check out this podcast. It's really simple. If you're not into the type of music he does, you can always just make your own music playlists, 30-minute music playlists.
Absolutely.
Hit start, do a thing. Maybe I'm a huge fan of photography tutorials. It's another great way to break yourself out of a rut, is to start learning a new skill, challenge yourself there, go and support an artist you really like and go buy their tutorial. And that can really help break me out of a rut sometimes too.
Yeah, totally. Where do you see the future of photography going?
Mhm. This is where my sorry. This is where my pessimistic Jordan hat might come on. I don't know. It's hard. The future of photography, I hope robots don't take over. That's my biggest one. I'm worried
I,
about the
I have I guess, I don't know whether you call it a theory, but a preposition that people will always want to be creative. They will always want to get outdoors. And unless the outdoors becomes so totally unpleasant that you don't want to go out there, then, you know,
you might have a robot do it.
you might have a robot do it. To be honest, for me personally, it's one of the reasons why I haven't bought a drone. The connection between being in a place, being able to see that, envision that, and then capture that, take it back, process it in a certain way. For me, putting a robot like a drone or anything else, whether I'm controlling it or it's AI controlling it just loses something in my personal opinion. Now, I love drone photography. I think some of it is absolutely fantastic. So I'm not knocking that, but for me, as a creator, I'm sitting there going, it's not what I want to do. Same
I'm
as
very
I don't want to
I'm
necessarily go and take wildlife shots or portraits,
I'm
landscape.
the I'm the same way with drones, man. I bought one, shot around. It was fun. It was exciting. Almost crashed it a couple times,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I realized it took me away from the
It's,
experience of
it's
like,
that separation.
yeah. And anytime I'm like, okay, get the drone. Can I fly here? The thing is the battery charged. Oh my God, what's that? Okay. That is the antithesis of the shooting experience I want to have.
Yeah,
It's already exciting enough. There's already enough stress. And I don't want to be worried about if I'm bothering anybody. I don't want to worry. So I feel you. It goes back to, yeah, just finding the thing you're really passionate about and just leaning into that. Yeah.
but I guess that goes to the point that I think humans will always want to be creative, and therefore there
Definitely.
will always be a place for it, and humans will always
Mm-hmm.
want to see. Maybe they won't in the future. That may be the death of landscape photography, that people
Well,
don't want to see human created images.
if I took a more optimistic, more positive view on it, I feel like the more AI generated stuff should make human made things worth more or
Yeah.
valued better, valued more. However you want to look at it, but it's sure you might be able to like I've seen some AI that looks perfect, like perfect photography,
Oh,
especially
totally. Yeah.
not so much landscapes yet, but a lot of portraiture stuff that makes me go, uh-oh, you
Yeah.
know.
I can
And,
see real threats for, say, product photography and maybe
or
graphic
graphic
design.
design or any of that sort of that would normally be made by somebody, and like
Yeah.
same deal. I have a
So I
buddy
think
who's
that creative aspect is going to, the handmade graphic design, handmade sort of product shoot is
Yep.
probably at some risk. I doubt, though, necessarily that it's not going to evaporate in the next 5 minutes.
But I feel like Napster, or you remember back in the day when digital
Yeah,
music came in, where it
that's
was like, oh God, the recording industry's
yeah.
done.
Well, photography's been dead for every
Well,
year for the
well, it's
last
when stock photography died, and then everybody was
exactly.
like, oh God, photography's dead. I understand that there is a bit of that. But the only issue is when those, if you look back at any of those things, large amounts of people lost their jobs for a very small amount of something. And
Yeah,
this small amount of something happens to be like a robot.
yeah,
I'm overgeneralizing, but
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's cool that people now have the ability to create more. I'm a big fan of creating, be creative, make things.
Yep.
But it's also important, like I said earlier, about being honest and truthful with your work. And we need to differentiate, I think, when AI work is being used over lens
Absolutely.
based work or whatever.
Yep.
But that's my, I guess, again, semi negative, pessimistic, optimistic viewpoint. I feel like in photography, I'm really interested to know overall how the photography industry is doing.
Yeah.
The last 2 years for me, I've been mainly in Web3, so I put a lot of effort and energy there in this part of my photography path, and it's not always going to be like that. But I've also spent other time with teaching workshops and conferences and seeing the Instagram worlds, and now that I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram, I wonder what the future is.
Mm.
I'm hoping workshops are doing well for people still. I think that's always going to be another one is until we cannot go places. The future of photography is still the experience and sharing those experiences with people. But yeah, I feel like it's interesting because I feel like 4 or 5 years ago, there was such an explosion of photographers and people teaching and starting YouTube channels, et
Absolutely.
cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now I'm reflecting on it and I'm seeing, and you look at workshops, you look at in real world teaching scenarios, I'm seeing less younger people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that's just me getting older because I used to be the younger person, but it's more I wonder if that's carrying through in the younger generations. Are new landscape photographers coming in? There always going to be attrition and there's always going to be younger people. Are they coming in on the right? Are they coming in with the right values?
Hmm.
Are they going to be coming in carrying on this next steps of the industry and the next steps of nature photography? I have, again, lots of skepticism about that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's even like Instagram. I've been noticing that everybody, there's a trend with Instagram of people zooming into planets on
Yep.
exact locations of
Yep.
places.
Yep.
Where 3 or 4 years ago, we were like finally getting to a place where people stop putting locations on things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what happened in 2 years? Now it's popular again. Is it because us old geezers aren't shaming them constantly, or I don't
I
know.
don't know.
It's this is the hard parts. It's we give the world an opportunity to maybe breathe a second, and then as soon as it's done breathing, we take more air from it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a hard one. I don't know. I feel like it's on the elders and the people who have been here working and doing those things to like try to teach the young bucks how to. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm feeling old today. I'm sorry, which
uh,
I'm not that old, I swear. But that's where I'm at on the future of photography. I am excited about it. I still love it, and I still believe in people getting to experience the joy of photography. And I can only hope more people get to do it.
yeah.
But the experience, that's the thing that needs to stay with us. It's no computer can take that away, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that for me is where I see that that passion that people have, like yourself and people like Guy Tal, etc. That's never going to go away, I don't think. And as long as
Yeah.
people feel creative, want to get out there and experience the world and show it to other people, that'll always be there. As I say, there's probably some risks in other forms of photography potentially, but yeah.
Yeah. It's we have a cool little bubble here, right? Like
Mm.
people who are like commissioned working all the time. This goes back to earlier, like I was talking about being like amateur versus professional or full time
Yep.
versus part time, and I I still don't know if I'd ever want to be full-time nature photography because it would take something away from that.
Yeah.
And I still think that AI and all these other things might play a role in that, but it's important that we're lucky in nature photography that we're not having have to deal with clients like any other photography form based.
Yeah. The trees and the waves and the rocks don't talk back and don't demand
Exactly.
anything from you.
But they don't pay that either, you
No,
know?
that's exactly it.
So,
Yeah. Making money out of them is a challenge. Yeah.
yeah, man.
If you could go back and talk to the 10 or 12-year-old Jordan, what would you tell him?
Buy Apple stock? I don't know. Jeez. I think I would tell 12-year-old Jordan that you're gonna do what you want to do.
Yeah.
I've been blessed to be able to live a life that I'm like genuinely is like mine. I'm doing what I love.
Mm-hmm.
I have I'm passionate about it. I'm getting to do things that have some of the events that I've worked on over the years have been so big that I can't even talk about them. I've been able to work on stages that I never would be able to play music on. I've been able to visit and experience natural phenomenon that has blown my mind and been able to like I would tell Jordan that it's going to be okay. And yeah, buy Apple stock. Buy Bitcoin, a whole bunch of it in 2000 whatever, 2011 or I think of Back to the Future. And but yeah, man, I'm lucky to say that I could say to Jordan of 12 years old that you're going to end up doing like the things you want to be doing and just keep at it and it's going to be okay, man.
That's fantastic. Are there any photographers you think I should be talking to? Guy Tell's obviously one of them.
Yeah, definitely. Any chance you get for him, man, he's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Guy Tell. Trying to think, man, that's who I would like to hear from or who I always love hearing from. I always love hearing from Alistair Ben. He's a great guy. Has he been on
Yeah.
yours yet?
Yeah,
You
he's
have?
been on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to look at
I'm,
your list, right? Because it's you got a pretty good list going for yourself,
I'm
man.
trying to build it. Yeah. I've
Yeah,
also got a very long. I'll never run out of people to talk to. That'll.
yeah, I'm sure. Trying to think about somebody that would be fun. I'm surrounded by so many photographers right now that it's like I know it's a cop out, but it's I can't.
Sorry, your sound's gone a bit weird.
How about now? You got me? Hello?
No, it's distorting for some reason.
How about now? How about now? There
That's better. Now we're back. Yeah.
you go. I just had to blow in the cartridge. Yeah, so I'm not trying to cop out or anything, but I'm like surrounded by so many great artists. It's hard. I'm a really big fan of Ian Plant. Have you heard of
Okay.
him before?
I can't say I have. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's a really creative guy. And he teaches. He's based in North Dakota or something,
Okay.
but he's a pretty well-known photographer, great teacher. He's really big on composition.
Yep.
Another good person to reach out to would be like Michael Sadovsky. He's a buddy too in the Web3 space, Mind's Eye.
Yep.
He's got a really great style. Ruben Wu would be great. There's some people, there's so many great people, man. Yeah.
All right, we got one more question for you, and it's very much a topical issue for many photographers. Do you
Okay.
like pineapple on pizza?
Definitely. I love pineapple on pizza and I'll fight that one to the death. Who cares? And this is coming from I grew up in New York. I'm
Uh-huh.
somebody who could rightfully tell you that I've had the best pizza ever. And I
Okay.
know that is also pretty damn American and egotistical to say, but I'll tell you,
Have you been to Naples?
I've not. But pineapple on pizza works for me. I won't discriminate on things like that. The question is the water being used to make the bread,
Ah, very much so.
because that's the magic.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today, Jordan. It's been wonderful getting to know you a little bit better and finding out more about what you do and how
Grant,
you
man, I
work.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Where
Thanks,
can
man.
people find your work?
Oh, you can check me out at Jordan Inglee on pretty much all the socials. JordanInglee.com is a place you can find out more from me too. And I'm pretty active on Twitter, and it's the best place to reach out is Twitter right now. But if you're on Instagram, Jordan Inglee, I'm there, and like my DMs are open. So if you ever want to reach out, ask a question, complain, tell me my work is too something, you can do that.
Tell you it's been photoshopped.
Yeah, it's been. Hey, your image was photoshopped. Yes, yes, sir, it was. Yes, yes, it was.
That's exactly my response. And then block.
Yeah.
All
Yeah, but
right.
again, Grant, thank you so much, man. It's good talking with you, and I appreciate what you're doing with your podcast, and it's really important. I think putting that content out isn't easy, so I can
Yeah.
appreciate everything you're doing, and this really helps the photography community at large. So
No,
thank you too.
thank you, Jordan, and thanks very much for taking the time to sit here and have a chat with me. Thanks
Thanks,
again
man.
for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.